How's it going, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the causes and effects of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, also known as CTE. My name is Ramiro de Rojas. I believe this is a subset of the psychological disorders topic because it is a disease or disorder that affects our brain and our behavior. Um, CTE is a neurodegenerative disease, which means it affects our brain function and our brain structure, and it occurs mostly in sports players and soldiers. I think it is very important because there's a lot of people in high school and college who are at risk of developing this disease. And in terms of high school people playing contact sports, they might not know what's best for them since they are minors, not adults, and that is a topic of controversy I will be talking about later. The causes of CTE, as I said before, are repeated mild brain injury, which is also known as concussions. These concussions generally come from sports. They can also come from military exercises. But examples of sports are American football, hockey. I'll give you guys a question: what high school sport has the most concussions? This is a very interesting fact I learned while learning about concussions in high school. The two research articles I'm going to be talking about are long-term consequences of repetitive brain trauma. This article talks about the pathology and the symptoms of CTE, kind of an overview, and then the second one shows some research that has been done in the subject and how we can learn how researchers study CTE and what techniques there are. So, medical symptoms, medical pathology, is a reduction of brain weight. This is shown in atrophy of the medial temporal lobe. This part of the brain contains a lot of relevant structures, such as the hippocampus, which is important for long term memory. Also, another part of it is enlarged ventricles, and this process is typically seen in older people and people with other brain disorders. Um, but the most important symptom or pathology of CTE is the higher concentration of hyperphosphorylated tau protein, also known as p-tau. In normal function, tau proteins help stabilize microtubules, which form cilia in the nose, for example, and they also help chromosomes divide when cells divide. In some diseases like Alzheimer's or CTE, this protein accumulates in the brain, forms tangles that don't allow or block nutrients from coming into the brain, and as a result, neurons that don't get enough nutrients eventually die. This slide, I got this from first research article. It just shows on detail the medical pathology for CTE. As you can see, it is incredibly complex. There is a lot of microscopic and macroscopic changes that occur in brains of people with CTE, and it just goes to show how hard it is to study this disease. Um, another more obvious um, picture I have here is how the concentration of tau protein increases as the disease progresses, right? In the first stage, you almost have no p-tau protein accumulation, but in the fourth stage, almost all of the brain has shown signs of having tau protein. The behavioral symptoms are varied and are actually pretty gradual. The early stages are things like memory problems, depression, instability, and the later stages build up on the early stages symptoms and add more severe disorders such as motor and language impairment and even dementia. These symptoms generally appear around a decade after this brain injury has been sustained. So there could be football players who don't know they have CTE until a decade after they're retired. And we'll talk about how that's a problem later. These symptoms are somewhat gradual. There's no guideline. As you can see in this table I got from the second research article, all these symptoms are present in each stage, but just the frequency and the severeness of the symptoms increases as you go down. The biggest controversy of CTE related to CTE has been the NFL, who has historically been opposed to links between football and brain damage. In 2005, this researcher called Bennett Omalu published a paper about CTE in a former football player who had died, and the NFL Science Committee actually condemned the paper and called for its retraction. And it wasn't until 2016 that the NFL finally admitted that there was a link or there's a problem in football with CTE, right? Um, in conclusion, this is a very recently discovered and analyzed disease, but it is very relevant in our current in this country because there are a lot of people playing high school sports and college sports that are contact sports, and they might develop CTE later on. And some medical professionals say that we should ban high school contact sports outright because the high high school sports players don't have the ability to decide what's best for them since they're minors, and they might not even know they're gonna develop this disease later. So I just wanted to ask what you guys think.